Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the chat show where we talk about empathy, employment, and innovation every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern with global leaders from the staffing industry and disability community. Today, my guest is Doug Leeby, CEO of Beeline, and a good friend who has been leading innovative talent solutions in HR tech, vendor management, and strategic sourcing for many years. Both Doug and I, we love to learn and adapt and improve. And Of course, I'm a big fan of him and the technology Beeline as a technology architect. We really admire all this amazing, innovative work you do, Doug, at Beeline. So with that, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nish. Really appreciate having me here. It's really fun to connect again.
Thank you. So Doug, let's start with something. How did you get into the technology? Tell us a little bit about your background and your journey in this area. Before that, I am so sorry. I want to wish you many happy returns of the day. I apologize. And wishing you all the best. I will not put the number.
Okay.
I will not make that announcement. I know because you and me, we take it a little, but wishing you all the best and
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Definitely over the hump and going to the other side. Hopefully between now and then. Thanks. Hey, Nish, listen, my story isn't very exciting from a technology perspective. Really, I'm not a technologist at all. I majored in history of Latin American and Russian studies in college. I went on to get a master's in human resources with a focus on organizational development. I started my first 10 years in consumer products, working for grocery, not chains, but food companies like Pillsbury Doughboy. I literally would walk around stores in the Doughboy outfit and all that stuff. So, while everybody was making money in the 2000s with the .com, I was still just trying to figure out how to get my flip phone opened up. And then, as it would be, I really wanted to change out of consumer products. And so I found a local company in Jacksonville, which is where I just moved. And it was a staffing firm. And so I knew somebody who got me in. I wanted to run a sales team. So I went to run sales. And this was 9/11 happened. The economy started to go down. And 9/11, I think, got really, really bad. So my stint in staffing wasn't very long because, unfortunately, that was a time of just scaling back offices, et cetera. And there was so the CEO called me in. We ended up selling that division, and the CEO called me in and said, "What would you like to do?" I said, "I'm really enamored with this little thing you got going to the side called Beeline. It seems really cool to me." And he said, "Well, go run product management." And of course, I said, "I've never been a product manager," and it's 30 people at the time. He said, "You'll figure it out." So that was my entree into technology, and I confess I'm not a strong technologist, but I think it's really cool how technology solves problems. So for me, it's more around solving the problems related to the workforce and unleashing the power of technology to do so in a more efficient, frictionless means. So I can't wax poetic about technology, but I can certainly share my experience over the last 20 years with the Beeline organization and how we brought technology to this sector.
That truly demonstrates your leadership, quality, and I really admire how you and the team at Beeline has been really providing very innovative solutions to not only employer partners but also staffing companies like us to make this whole engine work effectively and efficiently. So we admire that. So Doug, as you know, the theme and the purpose of this chat is we talk about empathy and employment and innovation. So tell us, in your views, how important and why empathy and innovation is so important when it comes to employment.
Sure. Look, before I even get into innovation, I think empathy is absolutely crucial just in life. And, we've got 9 principles at Beeline, and when we hire around those principles. And really what I'm trying to do is get a sense of one's ability to introspect and be empathic to others, to get out of one's way, because that's the key ingredient to teamwork, right? If I can understand what your issues and challenges are and meet you where you are, as opposed to always demanding that you come to me, then we'll have a far better, more productive relationship. So when I think about innovation, and you know this as well as I do, it's such a topic of discussion. It's a big buzzword, but for me, it's little more than solving problems, right? So there's maybe micro innovations, and there's these spectacular, sexy ones that the Elon Musks and the Bezos of the world bring. But I don't think you have to be of that ilk necessarily to innovate. It can be in whatever we do, even finding a way to clean your house in a more efficient way. So I think empathy is so crucial, because if it is truly just about solving problems, then empathy, of course, means understanding where you're coming from and feeling that in this case pain or the struggle, and then being motivated to go find a way to solve it. So I think they're inextricably tied for that very reason. And I think those that show great empathy have a higher propensity for successfully innovating in ways that solve these problems better and quicker.
Yeah, so that's at the individual level. I absolutely what I heard you say that how Beeline hires people with your 9 principles, empathy at the individual level. Share your thoughts on how does as a large global organization like your organization Beeline creates a culture of empathy, because as a corporate and as company, how is that carry forward at the corporate level from individual level?
It's a really good question, and I don't have an easy answer for it, and I won't sit here and pretend that we do it flawlessly or across the board. I do think it goes back to A, how you hire, and then B, what you communicate within the organization, how you train, how you develop, what you reward, what you penalize. We're not a very punitive organization, but we are big on feedback, right? And so a lot of my time, I always say half my job is just coaching and counseling. And maybe it's not half, but the point is, look, when you see things going off the rails, you got to point it out. And so if you come from a position of, I would say, from heart or from love, and then you give feedback in a way that you're doing so for the betterment of everybody, not to make somebody feel small, you're exhibiting empathy as well, while you're also coaching on empathy. And I don't think I'll ever be satisfied with the level of empathy that I'd like to see, probably even in the world, frankly, if we want to talk to that regard. But within the Beeline world, I mean, I do think we have a pretty good reputation for being very tight with our customers, our partners, everybody. We never looked at it as it was just Beeline and the client. The staffing world is extremely important in the equation. The MSPs, the payrollers, there's a whole community. And I always believe that for us to be super effective together, we need to understand each other's goals and challenges, and then work to solve them together in a way that's not maybe so self-serving or myopic. So it's a great question. I won't tell you that I've cracked the code by any stretch of the imagination, but it's something we talk about a lot. And I think therein lies part of the secret in just raising the tide from that regard.
No, and I 100% agree that, empathy is not something which anybody can say that we have cracked the code and we are perfect. And also what I believe that, empathy has also a range, and we all are empathetic in a one way, but it's depend on how far we are going in personal life as well as in business also. And we talked about this earlier about the customer service and how the product development. So tell me a little bit about that empathetic approach towards customer service or product development or innovation in that area. How is and why empathy is important?
Well, look, at the end of the day, I think we're trying to solve problems for our clients, so that's important from that regard. But I will share from a lessons perspective. In the early days, we were yes, whatever you said, yes, right? And be careful, because I think we felt like we were being empathic, but in reality, we were more taking notes and orders in terms of how to do the solution. And then as we got a little bit more mature, we realized that true empathy is understanding the problem and then taking the blinders off and thinking about different ways, as opposed to just saying, Nish, I'll solve it the way you want me to, because many of my clients suffer from the same challenges and problems. But if I were to one-off every single way that they want to solve that, I'd have a whole bunch of different ways, and that's not scalable. So, I think it's important to get a strong sense of where the other's coming from, but also to step back and think about that a little bit more globally and how others are facing that, so that you come up with the best solution. Because candidly, we probably did a lot of what we would consider innovative things back then where there was a lot of overlap. And had we just taken a breath and really stepped back and looked at what we were doing, we probably would have been more efficient with the right solution versus 3 or 4 mini good solutions, if that makes sense. And I think we've matured quite a bit now. And so one of the things I love that our dev team and our product team does is when my dev team, for example, has their stand-ups, we invite our clients. And so it's not uncommon to have 40 or 50 clients there, literally looking in the middle of our development cycles of what we're producing, what we're talking about, what we're challenging ourselves with, and giving real-time feedback of like, well, that'll never work, or no, that's not exactly where the pain point is. So that enables us to go much, much quicker and actually much more accurately as well.
Yeah. No, I what I heard is this empathetic approach of solving the problem is not just to say yes, whatever customer is saying. It's more consultative approach, is educating them at the same time, understanding their pain and educating and taking, picking the right solution. I love that. Picking the right solution instead of 3 or 4 from 3 or 4 good solutions. What is right for them? So we are putting ourselves in their shoe and helping them make that decision by educating them. So that's great. Now, as you know, and I think this will be the last question on empathy, because we've been talking about empathy a lot.
Yeah.
I would love to talk about technology a little bit more, but on the empathy side, you're as an individual, as a leader of such a large global, amazing technology organization, tech organization, what are those challenges, or how does empathy has helped, or in some cases has caused a little bit maybe more stress or challenges when you make the tough business decisions?
I like what you said about empathy being on a spectrum. Look, it can be like anything in life, a blessing and a curse, right? So empathy, sometimes I found myself in earlier years when a friend's son died, for example, absorbing so much of that pain that it's fine to be sad, etc., but to the point where we become debilitating and then almost hyper empathic, and that's not really good for anybody, including my friend, honestly. So I had to go through some learning from that regard. So like anything, it can help you and it can thwart your efforts as well. I think where we are now in terms of truly trying to understand what the problems are and incorporating that into how we look at requirements and how do we develop our software. And importantly, also thinking about the future problems that are coming, because so many of us have day jobs that we have to focus on. And I think it's our responsibility to start projecting that which will be necessary 2, 3 to 5 years down the road, and then start solving for those problems as well. Because every time you solve one, you let little things pop up, or you have an opportunity to go solve another one, right? So to answer your question in terms of how it's hurt us, look, I think, on a couple fronts, we are an organization that really, really wants to please our clients. And as I said earlier, sometimes we've jerked the car too far to the left side of the road, saying yes too quickly, or signing up for a date that maybe wasn't well vetted because we really felt the pain of the client, but we weren't mature in our response and our deliberate thought process to say, hang on, these are the parameters with which you're dealing with. If I'm really treating it with respect, it's with an honest answer and not succumbing to this angst I feel in the moment because, you're upset and so I'm upset, so let me get you an answer. Again, Nish, I think we've gotten much, much better, but I remember those days very, very well. And then I think, even within the organization, it's vitally important to me that we show empathy. But back to that spectrum, that doesn't mean you can't make, or that you shouldn't make hard decisions. And everybody goes through that. We've all had to do that, whether, an economic downturn spawns it, or a merger and there's synergies that you have to go. Like, those are really, really difficult, horrible times. And they weigh on people with empathy, as I'm sure you can appreciate. However, I think you also have to have empathy for the greater organism, right? And understand that it hurts to do certain things on this relationship that's one-on-one, but for the greater organization, these are the right things to do. So keeping perspective, I would say, is vitally important for those of us that feel pretty empathic in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times, empathy can be misunderstood as something where, compromising the quality or compromising in customer service. Yeah. That's not, so Yeah, means I 100%. So let's change some gears and
Okay.
talk about the employment and how your organization is really contributing and impacting with the whole unemployment. And as these companies are going to hire new workforce and bring in, Beeline has a very important role to play. So tell us what's happening in that space and how
Yeah,
you guys are evolving and contributing.
yeah, thanks. Let me start by saying typically what we see in difficult times is the enterprise will start to diminish its contingent workforce. So we see it first, right?
Yeah.
Conversely, we see the uptick happen as well, which is great news. And we were tracking the metrics, as you could imagine, weekly back in last March. And obviously, it showed a pretty ugly picture. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's this massive rebound, but things are absolutely going in the right direction. And we actually didn't see pay rates go down precipitously either, which often happens with economic downturns. So what I believe is the staffing world and the VMS, which is the vendor management software world, which is the business I'm in, and the managed service providers, we all have very noble, we do noble work, in my opinion, because we help people find work.
Yes.
And that's really, really important. And one of the things I feel very strongly about is I think we as a mini micro society have to do a better job elevating our contractors, right? And I think sometimes they're seen as second-class citizens, which, in my mind, there's no such thing as a second-class citizen. So that's a pretty offensive perspective to begin with. But traditionally, as you can appreciate, there have been many times when people in the enterprise feel like, well, I've got my full-time folks for the strategic work. The less strategic, I'm going to go to the staffing firm. And the world has changed enough in that the skills that are in short supply, data scientists, for example, cybersecurity. I can't afford all those people. I outsource a lot of that, right? And even now, this notion of working remote is so much more prevalent. It's a really opportune moment for us to elevate this remarkable talent that we call contingent labor. So to answer your question, how are we contributing? I continue to talk about this and put a spotlight on God gives us all these great talents, whether you're a street sweeper or a cybersecurity guru, it doesn't matter. We all have a place on this planet, and we need to be empowered to unleash our value and do our very best. And in my mind, organizations such as yours and mine and our brother and sister in the world have got a really solemn opportunity and obligation to get this talent front and center with the enterprise and to put them to work and show these folks just the phenomenal outcomes that can be delivered from these people. So certainly we're doing the transactional work of connecting people to the staffing firms and with the enterprise. But I would argue that we have a much bigger obligation, as I just referenced, to elevate the notion of contract work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's where your organization is, I would say, is providing the infrastructure. Do you agree or share your thoughts? What is, and that's the role, the way I see, you guys provide the infrastructure to companies who is really, hiring and bringing in this talent using. So tell us what is that infrastructure for some of the viewers who is not familiar?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Beeline software or platform or infrastructure, as you call it, is the VMS, the vendor management software. And so what it does is it's just a cloud-based platform that sits in between the Fortune 2000 and staffing firms. And in some cases, private talent pools and other sources of talent. And in essence, it just acts as a bridge between the job requisitions that are going out and the talent, and in essence, puts them together. So it's the software platform that enables these large organizations to go out and find great talent and bring them in at a variable or supplemental methodology.
Great. Sorry.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely makes sense. Absolutely. Now, in your world of this technology, and as we know with the current this whole situation with unemployment,
sure.
Do you see, or how do you see an opportunity for companies like Beeline to leverage some of the AI and some of the latest technology where there are mixed feelings about taking away the jobs? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. It comes up a lot. We talk, and this is maybe a buzzword. We certainly didn't author it, but AI which is often artificial intelligence, more in terms of augmented intelligence. I think AI will supplant many jobs. There's no question about that. But every time, at least in my reading, that something becomes less meaningful and obscure due to technology or whatever, something else pops up. So on balance, I'm not that concerned about that. I do have a lot of concerns about the widening of the gap economically in society. And when you look at the job loss over the last year in the pandemic, I mean, majority of those were $40,000 salaries and less. It just got devastated. I don't remember what the figure is, but people that make $80,000 to $100,000 or more, a very high percentage of those people can still work out of the home. So they were not as impacted to the same degree. So when we think in terms of AI, I think we also need to be very cognizant of how it can help us make better decisions, but not necessarily with the goal of just replacing all these people. Because at the end of the day, people are still vitally important, as we talked about earlier with the notion of God-given talent, et cetera. Will some jobs get automated? Yeah, absolutely. But AI can then go and look at what I think transferable skills are of those individuals and help place them in other industries. Not everything lends itself to automation or even to being replaced by AI. So the more we can start looking at the talent and discerning through machine learning what those skill sets are, the skill attributes, and where they may measure up, the better off we'll be to help predict successful matches in other arenas. Right now, in my opinion, we're only starting to scratch the surface with the data and the AI, and we're discerning really interesting, fascinating facts and information. The next stage is then actually to utilize that, whether it's in-app or with another company of some sorts, to help bring talent together with the jobs. So I hope I haven't been too verbose here, but you asked a short question, I gave you a very long answer, but that's how I start to look at it.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Any particular project or thing which your organization is working on leveraging, enhancing your services to the employers? Any example you can think of?
For sure. There's a company called Brightfield Strategies. They're in our industry. You may know them. They've been a very strong consultancy, but they've pivoted more to be a technology firm in the last several years. And they're really a data company. They're data scientists, and we partner with them. I have for many years, but we about a year ago endeavored to look at a lot of our data and try to just prove or disprove some theses we had. And we're very excited because just recently, like literally just weeks ago, we understood, or we've come to understand that there's basically 4 different buying patterns that we as individuals have, especially with contractors. It could be geared towards speed, it could be geared towards price, it could be both, or it could be clueless, naive, don't really know what I'm doing here, I'm just trying to find a body and I'm gonna therefore probably overspend. So there's some really interesting data stories that we're pulling out of that will enable us to go to the enterprise and help them through the technology make better decisions, not just at the global data scale, but specifically within their organization. So we can predict outcomes on the front end and then help guide them gently down a different path so we achieve the outcomes that they endeavored in the beginning, even though they probably weren't going to get where they thought they were going to get because buying behaviors across the board and people don't really understand that right now. So, for example, Nish, if you were to go hire an empathy expert, that's in you, man. You get how to do that, so you don't really need any help. If you're going to hire an engineer for a bridge building, like, I don't know, you could probably do that too. I don't know. But
I don't know.
The point is, like, there's areas I'm naive in, and the data should inform me and help guide me to make better decisions. And that's a major project that we in Brightfield are at the final stages of, that it will help the buy community in a major way.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's the real impact, and that's how the organization like you is really influencing or creating that, and or influencing and helping companies grow and make the right decisions. So that's amazing. That's excellent. Now I would like to switch gears a little bit, and as you know, I'm passionate about, and we all at Rangam, about disability and inclusion, and you are too. So tell us a little bit about disability inclusion.
Yeah, well, look, I think you guys are doing remarkable work. My personal passion was more on the autism front, as we discussed. Yep. So I was really, my heart was very warmed when you shared with me some of the great work you're doing. And I think, we should be, proud's not the right word because it's so long overdue, but I'm happy we're finally looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion in a serious vein. I think it's tragic and disgusting. It took what it took for the world to start looking at this in a more serious vein, because there have been so many George Floyds prior to this year. For whatever reason, this was the tipping point. So the good news is, if we can draw some positives out of it, is that I believe organizations are in earnest serious about doing something. And a lot of people think that's exploitation of the situation. I don't think so. I think there's good people who've always wanted to do the right thing, but we just had day jobs and we got preoccupied. And then this was kind of this shaking of enough is enough. And so I start there, because I think we have to understand diversity inclusion is a lot more about whom you want to marry, who you pray to, what color your skin is, etc. And the niche that you're filling is a really important one as well. And it's one that's not talked about that often. And so that's why I'm so proud of the work you're doing, and why we started talking about how can we partner together and, again, this great talent in front of great organizations and create win-win opportunities. So look, I think we all have a lot to give in the world, and I think we all have a disability of some sort or not, depending how you define it. And you really expanded my perspective of just the high percentage of people with disabilities. So for me, I would put it under the overall umbrella of doing the right thing for people. And this is a group that maybe hasn't been focused on as much as it should be. And so I'm so happy to meet you and know that you're doing the great work that you guys are.
No, and same here. We also know that you and Beeline has been doing some amazing work in this space. And as you earlier mentioned, listening to our customers. And when we hear that, without us reaching out to them, that's when you know that, okay, there is a movement, things are progressing. So both on our side, we have pretty much the similar experience or same experience. So that's a great news for the disability community. And last, we all know, and last about 9 months, 10 months has been really challenging. So as a leader of this large global tech organization, how was your experience leading the team and helping them with, either it's a disability or anything, because we all know right now what we all went through. So share your thoughts and some of the great work you have done as a leader.
Thanks. I don't know that, I've done great work, but I'll share how we approached it. And I'm just a firm believer that we're all adults, right? And adults want the truth, and they want it unvarnished, and they just want it fast. And so we took some relatively severe measures in April, because as I've been doing this for 20 years, I've been through a couple of recessions, and you got to get ahead of these things. My goal was not to let anybody leave the organization. However, we did have to make some hard decisions on cost cutting, so salaries were impacted. And there was a lot of debate about that. And we spent a lot of time as executive team and the senior leadership talking about it. And then in the end, it just made the decision that we're all going to suffer together, but we're all going to stay together. And we have a really unique opportunity to go do really great things this year if we don't allow the specter of COVID to bring us down. But that also necessitates a different approach. And I remember a lady on my team, very upset, who's been with me a long time, wanted to quit. I was like, whoa, slow down, what's going on? And her experience was, I've got these children here. I'm used to giving you 100% for 8-9 hours a day. Now I've got these eyes looking up at me, and I feel guilty, and I can't do both. And I said, time out. Yeah, you can. Even if you give me 4 hours a day and it's at nighttime, we'll get through this, right? So look, I took salaries, I took something from you, but you get to take something as well. And together we're going to figure out a way to do this. And the feedback I got consistently was, we love the transparency from the executive team. There's no BS, and we all deserve that. Everybody deserves that. Why wouldn't you do that? But I think sometimes people are afraid of the results of giving the truth out. And I think you should always respect the human more than the colleague. And so if I give you bad news and that causes you to leave, that's fair game, right? But I owe that to you. So we did a good job, I think, in that regard. And I will share with you, by the end of the year, we actually ended up having a record year on many different levels. And I attribute that, thank you, I think it's the team, though, right? And they came together and they respect each other. They showed the grace that was so necessary in these difficult times. They picked up when another one fell down. We lost some colleagues. It was horribly sad, but we came together as a team. And I feel like it was a year that expose true colors, and that's what adversity does, and they stepped up. So, look, there was a lot of sadness in 2020, but I actually look back on the year and say, wow, this group of colleagues, this family of mine just came together and crushed it.
That's amazing. That's very powerful. And so before we conclude, Doug, it has been a great conversation. I'm really enjoying. I wish we had more time. Any incidents or story or any which is related to employment or empathy related to this topic you would like to share with us?
That's a tough one. I wish we should have prepared on that one as we.
No, I think I know you will able to do that. Within your organization, right? You just mentioned one story about someone within your organization. Anything like that?
Okay, I'll give you one. This was kind of fun. You asked earlier, how do you not necessarily teach empathy, but how do you exhibit it and how do you raise the bar in the organization? It wasn't quite that, but that was in essence the direction you're going. And so I had fun with this one day. I sent an email out to the organization and I said, I can't remember what the gift was, but some sort of gift for the first person to come back and tell me who the CEO is of the private equity firm that owns us. And, mailbox flooded within 30 seconds. Okay, fine. Then I waited about 10 minutes and then I sent the email out and said, it was a bigger gift for the first person to come back and tell me the name of the lady that cleans our office. And it was like 20 minutes passed. And then they all start coming in. Well, they'd run outside and they found Miriam and asked her the name. But the point was obvious, right? It's like, guys, that ain't cool. So everybody knows way up, but this lady comes in every single day and takes our trash out. And like, that ain't cool. So that was kind of a fun story where people like, yeah. And then what was neat was seeing the interaction with the teammates and Miriam thereafter. It's like, everybody matters. And for me, that's what empathy is about.
So Doug, let me tell you, you mentioned earlier that I don't know if I'm doing the great job as a leader in building them. This is a perfect example. You are doing an amazing job in building that empathetic culture within your organization. So we thank you for that. And that is the real value, right? Is people who are working, whether disabled, unable, male, female, doesn't matter at what level. But how do we treat everyone with respect and balance, managing that equity? Yeah. So that is so powerful. So I thank you for your leadership and some great work you do, and thank you for your time.
It's fun being with you, and thanks for the great work you're doing as well. I'm really proud of you and your colleagues.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, and thank you, Ginger, for doing wonderful job. And thank you, everyone. We will continue our conversation on empathy, innovation, and employment next week, next Tuesday, same time, same place. And wishing you all the best, happy and healthy remaining of the days of this week, and see you next week. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Nish.
Bye. Thank you, Doug.
Bye, Ginger.